My parents threw a surprise birthday party for my sister in my backyard while I was at work. They used my grill, my pool, and my speakers, and left behind nearly $2,300 worth of damage. When I got home, my mom said, "Don't be so dramatic, we're family." I didn't argue or raise my voice, I simply handed her an invoice. She laughed and ripped it up, so I gave the second copy to my lawyer instead. When the certified legal letter arrived at their house, the first thing I noticed as I pulled into my driveway was a single balloon caught high in the maple tree. It was bright pink, slightly deflated, and tangled around a tree branch about 20 feet above the ground. The silver letters reflected the evening sunlight. "Happy 30th, Emma." I stopped my truck in the middle of the driveway and just stared. Then I noticed the tire tracks across my lawn, not just one set, at least 4. My front gate was hanging open, plastic cups were scattered through the flower beds. And a folding table had been left beside the hedge, with one leg sinking into the soft ground next to a broken sprinkler head. Music was still playing somewhere in the backyard. I stepped out of my truck slowly. My name is Simon. I was 34 years old and I owned a small landscaping business called Green Line Lawn Services. We mowed lawns, trimmed hedges, repaired irrigation systems, installed sod, and handled seasonal yard cleanups for both homes and businesses. Most of my life had been spent restoring outdoor spaces. That evening, I came home to find my own completely wrecked. I walked through the open gate and stopped so suddenly that my work boots scraped against the patio stones. My backyard looked like a wedding reception had crashed into a college party. Pink streamers were hanging from the fence. Melted ice covered the patio. Chicken bones were scattered across the deck, and wet towels were piled beside the pool. Frosting was smeared across the outdoor table I had built with my own hands. My grill was still open, with thin trails of smoke rising from the burners. One of the control knobs had melted. Both of my outdoor speakers were lying on their sides near the pool. One had a long crack across the casing, while the other was completely soaked. The pool water had turned cloudy, and a plastic chair floated near the shallow end. My mother stood by the back door holding a roll of garbage bags. The moment she saw me, she smiled as though I had just arrived at a party I was supposed to attend. "Oh, good," she said. "You're home." I looked at her, then at my father, who was quietly folding a tablecloth while avoiding my eyes. My sister, Emma, was sitting near the fire pit with 3 of her friends. She wore a silver birthday sash and held a glass of champagne. "What happened here?" I asked. Emma laughed. "Surprise," she said. "Mom and Dad threw me a birthday party in your backyard." Mom waved her hand casually. "Your place is perfect for parties. You have the pool, the grill, the speakers, and plenty of space." "Our yard is just too small." I turned toward the back door. The lock wasn't damaged. That meant they had used the old garage code. I had given that code to my parents 2 years earlier for emergencies. A burst pipe was an emergency. A break-in was an emergency. My sister's 30th birthday wasn't. "How many people were here?" I asked. Mom shrugged. 30, maybe 35. 42, Emma corrected proudly, not counting the kids. I looked back at the yard. A streak of grease ran down the deck beside the grill. Several deck boards were scorched. My newly planted hydrangeas had been crushed, and the lawn behind the pool was torn into muddy tracks where heavy tables had clearly been dragged. "You invited more than 40 people onto my property while I was at work. We didn't go through the house," Dad said quickly. I looked at him. "Then where did everyone use the bathroom?" He didn't answer. Emma took another sip of champagne. "You're doing that thing again," she said. "What thing?" Making everything awkward. I stared at her. She had always been good at that. Emma could create a disaster, then somehow convince everyone else that the real problem was the person pointing it out. Mom stepped between us. "Simon, don't be dramatic. We're family." I didn't raise my voice or lose my temper. Instead, I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures of everything around me. Mom's smile slowly disappeared. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Documenting the damage." "Oh, for heaven's sake." I photographed the grill, the deck, the speakers, the pool, the broken sprinkler head, the tire marks across the lawn, and the crushed flower beds. Then I walked inside the house. The kitchen floor was sticky, empty bottles covered the counters, and muddy footprints stretched all the way down the hallway. Someone had even turned my bedroom into a coat room. 3 purses and a child's jacket were lying across my bed. One of Emma's friends walked in behind me. "I'm sorry," she said awkwardly. "Your mom told us you already knew about the party." I looked at her. I didn't. Her expression changed immediately. "Oh, that one word told me everything." My family had lied to everyone because they knew exactly what they were doing was wrong. I went back outside. "You all need to leave," I said. Mom looked surprised. "We're cleaning up." "No," I replied calmly. "You're packing your things and leaving." Dad stepped forward. "Simon," Emma stood up. "You're seriously kicking me out of my own birthday party? It stopped being your party the moment you used my house without permission." Her friends quietly began gathering their belongings. Emma's face turned bright red. "This is unbelievable. Mom was just trying to do something nice for me. She could have done it at her own house. We don't have a pool," Emma shot back. "Exactly." Frustrated, Emma threw her champagne glass into a trash bag so hard that it shattered. "You always make everything about money." I looked around at the destroyed backyard. "You used my property without asking and caused thousands of dollars in damage. Of course this is about money." Mom folded her arms. "We'll clean everything." "Problem solved. You can't clean a cracked speaker. It was old anyway. I bought it 4 months ago." She rolled her eyes. That was the moment I stopped explaining myself. For years, I had tried to explain simple, reasonable things to people who benefited from pretending they didn't understand. I explained why I couldn't keep lending Emma money after she never repaid the first loan. I explained why I couldn't mow my parents' lawn for free every week while running a business with employees depending on me. I explained that being family didn't give anyone unlimited access to my home, my time, my tools, or my money. Every explanation turned into an argument. Every boundary became an insult. So I stopped explaining. "You have 10 minutes, I said. Mom gave me a disappointed look. "After everything we've done for you," I almost laughed. Yes, my parents had raised me. They fed me, clothed me, and gave me a place to live. But they also made it clear from the day Emma was born that my role was to be the easy child while they focused on her. Emma got dance lessons. I was told sports were too expensive. Emma received a car when she turned 16. I bought my first truck from a retiring landscaper after working 2 full summers. When Emma dropped out of college, my parents said she needed time to figure things out. When I skipped college to start a lawn care business with a borrowed mower, they called me unambitious. Then everything changed. 1 mower became 3, 3 customers became 30. I hired my first employee, then another. Within 6 years, I owned 2 full crews, several commercial contracts, and a small warehouse. Suddenly, I wasn't unambitious anymore. I was the successful one. And somehow, being successful meant everyone believed my belongings belonged to the whole family. My truck could be borrowed. My employees could quickly help at my parents' house. My tools disappeared for months. My savings were expected to cover every family emergency, which somehow always included Emma's rent, her credit card bills, or another wedding expense. The backyard was the first thing I had ever built just for myself. When I bought the house, it was nothing but dead grass, cracked concrete, and an old rusted chain-link fence. I spent 2 years transforming it. I installed the irrigation system myself. My crew and I laid the sod after work. I built the deck on weekends and saved long enough to pay for the pool instead of financing it. The grill was my reward after Green Line landed its first municipal contract. Every corner of that yard represented years of hard work, my work, and my parents handed it over to Emma for an afternoon because saying no to her had always been harder than respecting me. The last guest finally drove away 8 minutes later. My parents followed everyone toward the gate. Just before leaving, Mom turned back. "I hope you're happy," she said. "You embarrassed your sister." I glanced at the cracked speaker. "Can you send me the name of the catering company?" She frowned. "Why?" "Because their van damaged my lawn. It was only parked there for a few minutes. Just send me the name." She shook her head and walked away. Emma was the last one to leave. She stopped beside me, still wearing her birthday sash. "You know what your problem is?" she asked. "I'm sure you're about to tell me. You think owning a little lawn care company makes you important." I looked down at my work shirt. The Green Line logo was covered in sweat and dust after a 12-hour shift. "That little company supports 7 employees, I replied. She smirked. "Congratulations." Then she walked out. I locked the gate behind her. For the next 3 hours, I cleaned the mess. I skimmed napkins, plastic forks, and balloon ribbons out of the pool. I picked up empty bottles scattered across the flower beds. I scrubbed frosting off the table and grease stains from the patio. Around 11 that night, I switched off the broken speakers and sat alone beside the cloudy pool. I wasn't just angry, I was exhausted, not the kind of exhaustion that comes from working long days. I knew that feeling well after years of mowing lawns in the summer heat and loading equipment before sunrise. This was different. I was tired of being treated as if my success meant I no longer had the right to say no. The following morning, I called a pool technician, an electrician who handled outdoor sound systems, and a contractor to repair the deck. I also had one of my crews inspect the lawn and irrigation system. The total damage came to exactly $2,300. The pool cleaning and damaged pump intake cost $820. The grill repairs came to $340. Replacing the outdoor speakers cost $460. Repairing and refinishing the burned deck boards was $520. The crushed sprinkler head, damaged sod, and flower bed repairs added another $160. I printed every estimate and receipt, then created a formal invoice. Property damage caused during an unauthorized private event, total due $2,300. Payment required within 14 days. That Sunday, my parents invited me over for dinner. I knew it wasn't for an apology, but I went anyway. Emma was already there, sitting at the kitchen table eating pie as if nothing had happened. Mom smiled and placed a plate in front of me. I made pot roast. I'm not staying for dinner, Dad let out a long sigh. Can we please not do this? I placed the invoice on the table. Mom picked it up. What's this? The repair bill. Emma leaned over, read it, and burst into laughter. You actually made us an invoice. I made one for the people responsible for the damage. Mom looked at the numbers. $820 to clean a pool. That's ridiculous. The filter was clogged with paper decorations. The technician had to partially drain the system, and $460 for speakers. They were left beside the pool and got soaked. Emma rolled her eyes. One of the kids probably splashed them. It was an accident. Accidents still cost money. Dad pushed the invoice back toward me. We're not paying $2,300 over a few small repairs. Then your homeowner's insurance can speak with mine. Mom's expression hardened. You'd really file an insurance claim against your own parents. I'm asking you to pay for the damage you caused. We didn't cause it, she snapped. The guests did. You invited those guests for Emma's party. Emma laughed again. This is pathetic. I looked at her. You posted over 30 photos from the party. In several of them, people are standing on the deck beside my grill. One video even shows your friend spraying champagne all over my speakers. Her smile faded. You were stalking my account. You tagged my house. Mom grabbed the invoice. That's enough. She tore it in half, then she ripped it again. The sound of the paper tearing filled the silent room. She dropped the pieces onto the table. There, she said. Now can we act like a family? I looked at the torn paper before meeting her eyes. I brought another copy. Dad stood up. Simon, don't threaten your mother. I'm not threatening anyone. You walked into our home with invoices and insurance claims. What do you call that? Consequences. Emma shoved her chair back. You're really going to destroy this family over a grill and some grass? No. I'm asking you to pay for what you damaged. Same thing. That sentence stayed with me. To Emma, accountability was the same as destruction. To my parents, keeping the peace meant I quietly paid the bill myself. I picked up the torn pieces of paper and slipped them into my pocket. You have 14 days, Mom laughed. And what happens after that? I hand the copy to my lawyer. She stared at me for a second before laughing even harder. Dad joined in. Even Emma smiled. You have a lawyer now? Mom asked. I own a business. Of course I have a lawyer. And what's he going to do? Emma said. Sue us over a birthday party? I guess we'll find out. I left without touching the pot roast. 14 days passed. No payment came. No apology either. Instead, Mom started calling relatives. My aunt messaged me saying my parents were heartbroken by my financial attack. My cousin asked why I was trying to profit from Emma's birthday. Emma even posted a vague message online about people who cared more about possessions than family. I didn't respond publicly. I sent my parents one private message instead. Payment deadline, Friday, 5:00 p.m. After that, all communication regarding the property damage will go through my attorney. Mom replied less than a minute later, you need therapy, at 5:00 p.m. On Friday, I emailed the photographs, repair estimates, security footage, social media videos, text messages, and the invoice to my attorney, Daniel Price. Daniel had helped me establish Green Line as a limited liability company. He had reviewed commercial contracts, handled a dispute with a supplier, and once recovered nearly $12,000 from a client who refused to pay. He was calm, methodical, and never impressed by emotional manipulation. He called me about 20 minutes after receiving everything. You have exterior security cameras? He asked. Front gate, driveway, patio. And pool entrance, any warning signs posted, one at each gate. Did they have permission to enter? No. How did they get in? They used the old garage code. Did they know they didn't have permission? I have a text from 6 months ago telling my mother not to use my property for family gatherings unless I'm present, and I've approved it beforehand. Daniel paused. Why did you send that message? Because she had previously suggested using my pool for my cousin's graduation party. That helps. Are we actually filing a lawsuit? Not yet. First, I'll send a formal demand letter. It'll include the documented damages, the unauthorized entry, and a payment deadline. If they ignore it, we can move forward with small claims court. I leaned back in my office chair. Will this make me look ridiculous? To whom? My family. Daniel stayed quiet for a moment. Simon, your family already thinks asking them to take responsibility is unreasonable. You're never going to find a version of accountability they're happy with. That was exactly what I needed to hear. Send it, I said. The certified letter arrived at my parents' house the following Wednesday at 10:16 that morning. I knew the exact time because my mother called me at 10:19. I didn't answer. She called again. Then my father, then Emma. By noon, I had 19 missed calls. At 12:07, Mom texted me. What have you done? I didn't respond. Another message appeared. A lawyer sent us a threatening letter. Call me immediately. At 1:00 p.m., Daniel forwarded me an email from my father. Dad claimed the party had simply been a family misunderstanding and insisted the damages were greatly exaggerated. Daniel replied by attaching the repair estimates, photographs, and still images from the security cameras. At 2:30, Emma called the Green Line office. My office manager, Rosa, answered. Emma claimed there was a family emergency and demanded to know where I was. Rosa placed her on hold and called my cell phone. Your sister sounds like she's trying to invade a small country, she joked. Tell her all legal communication goes through Daniel. There was a brief pause. Do I actually get to say legal communication? Yes, I've been waiting 6 years for this. 5 minutes later, Emma sent me a voice message. You are completely insane. Mom is crying. Dad's blood pressure is up. They could lose their house because of you. The demand letter requested $2,300 in damages plus $275 in attorney's fees. No one was going to lose a house. But in my family, any consequence that affected my parents or Emma instantly became a disaster. I forwarded the voice message to Daniel. That evening, my parents came to my house. I watched them through the doorbell camera. Dad stood closest to the front door. Mom stood behind him holding the certified letter. Emma waited near the driveway. I spoke through the camera. All communication goes through my attorney. Dad looked straight into the lens. Open the door. No, we need to discuss this as a family. You had 14 days to do that. Mom stepped forward. You've made your point. The invoice still hasn't been paid. We're not paying your lawyer's fee, Dad replied. That's between you and Daniel now. Emma walked a little closer. You're enjoying this, aren't you? For a moment, I almost opened the door, not because she had hurt me, but because I wanted her to see my face when I answered. Instead, I stayed inside. No, I said through the speaker. You're protecting yourself from your own family, she asked, especially from people who use the word family as permission. Mom's expression tightened. We gave you that family, and I gave you a chance to fix the damage. You can afford it, Emma shouted. There it was, the real truth, not that they hadn't caused the damage. Not that the repairs didn't cost $2,300. Their real argument was simply that I could afford to absorb the loss. I answered calmly. My ability to pay doesn't give you the right to damage my property. No one said a word. You need to leave, I said. Dad pointed at the camera. This is going to follow you, Simon. People will know what kind of man you are. I'm comfortable with that. They left. 2 days later, Daniel received a settlement offer. My parents would pay $1,000 if I agreed to drop the case and apologize to Emma for ruining the memory of her 30th birthday. Daniel read the offer to me over the phone. Do you want my professional opinion? He asked. And your personal one? Professionally, it's inadequate. Personally, your sister's birthday memory was apparently worth more to them than your property. Reject it. He did. The deadline passed without any payment, so Daniel officially filed the small claims case. That was when the rest of the truth came out. Emma's friend Lindsay contacted me through social media. She had attended the party. I'm sorry, she wrote. We were all told you were working late and that you had offered your house for the party. Your mother said you wanted it to be a surprise for Emma. I asked if she would be willing to put that in writing. She agreed. 2 other guests sent similar statements. One even included a screenshot of the invitation. At the bottom, in pink letters, it read, "Hosted by Simon at his beautiful home." I stared at those words for a long time. They hadn't just used my house, they had used my name to make everything appear legitimate. Daniel added the invitation and the witness statements to our evidence. 3 days before the court hearing, my father called Daniel. They wanted to settle. The meeting was scheduled at Daniel's office. My parents arrived together, while Emma came separately and sat at the far end of the conference table. Mom looked smaller than usual. Dad looked exhausted, though the anger was still visible on his face. Emma avoided looking at me. Daniel placed the settlement agreement in front of them. The total amount was $2,575, the original repair costs plus the attorney's fee from the demand letter. Once the payment cleared, I would dismiss the claim. Dad read the first page and frowned. "This is humiliating." Daniel calmly folded his hands. "The agreement is confidential. A public court filing would not be." Dad fell silent. Mom looked at me. "Are you really going to make your own parents sign this? I asked you to pay an invoice. We didn't think you were serious. That's not a defense. We thought you'd calm down." I was calm the entire time. That answer seemed to bother her more than if I had shouted. Emma finally looked up. "You've made your point." I shook my head. "No, the point was never to scare you. The point was that you don't get to use my property, damage it, laugh at the bill, and walk away. It was just one party. It was my home." She lowered her eyes again. Dad tapped the agreement. "I'll pay $1,500. Emma can cover the rest." Emma's head snapped up. "What? It was your party. You and your mother planned it. I didn't ask anyone to destroy his yard." Mom turned toward her. "You loved the party. I didn't know Simon hadn't agreed to it until he came home." The room went completely silent. I watched my mother's expression change. It was the first time Emma admitted the truth. Mom stared at her. "You knew we used the garage code. I thought you had permission. You helped send the invitations. You told me Simon had already said yes." Dad rubbed his hands across his face. For years, my parents and Emma had protected each other from facing consequences. But now, with a legal agreement on the table and real money involved, that unity finally started to fall apart. Daniel slid a pen toward my father. "How you divide the payment is a family matter. My client is simply owed the full amount." Dad signed first, Mom signed next. Emma stared at the paper. "I don't have $1,000. I believed her. Emma earned enough money, but she spent it almost as soon as she received it. Designer clothes, expensive dinners, weekend trips, and endless purchases posted online to maintain the image of a perfect life. "You had money for 42 guests," I said. "Mom and Dad paid." Dad looked at her. "We paid for the food. You paid for the decorations and drinks with my credit card." "That is still money," Daniel replied. Emma glared at him, then reluctantly signed. My parents paid $1,575, and Emma had 30 days to pay the remaining $1,000. She sold several designer handbags and transferred the money on the 28th day. Once the final payment cleared, Daniel officially dismissed the case. I repaired the backyard. The pool pump was cleaned and partially rebuilt. The damaged deck boards were replaced. New speakers were mounted higher on the wall, safely away from the pool. My crew repaired the irrigation system and installed fresh sod where the caterer's van had torn through the lawn. By the end of the month, the backyard looked as good as new. My relationship with my family, however, did not. Mom stopped calling for several weeks. Dad sent me one short message. "I hope the money was worth it." I replied, "The boundary was." Emma blocked me on social media. 2 months later, she showed up at my office. Rosa noticed her through the front window. "Should I call Daniel?" she asked, "or release the guard squirrels? I'll talk to her." Emma stood beside my desk with her arms crossed. She looked uncomfortable without an audience. "I'm not here to fight," she said. "Okay." She glanced around the office. Crew schedules covered one wall. Framed photos of completed projects hung beside safety certificates, and there was a picture of my employees at our annual barbecue. "I didn't realize how big the company had become," she admitted. I leaned back. "You've been calling it my little grass-cutting business for years." She looked embarrassed. "You even said it before the party." She looked away. "I came to tell you that Mom lied to me about having permission." "Yes," I replied. "I know. I honestly believed you had agreed to host it." "You still laughed at the damage." Her expression tightened. "I was embarrassed, so I insulted you. You could have apologized." She sat down across from me. For once, she didn't have a quick answer. Finally, she spoke. "I'm sorry." For the party, for everything I said, and for making you pay for so much over the years. I didn't ask you to apologize for everything. I know, she said quietly. But I should. I studied her face, searching for the performance I'd seen so many times before. Maybe part of it was still there. Emma had spent 30 years saying whatever protected her. But she had also paid $1,000 she couldn't afford. Sometimes consequences don't change people overnight. Sometimes they simply create the first crack through which reality can finally enter. I accept your apology, I said, but the rules don't change. What rules? You don't use my house without permission. You don't ask my employees for free work. You don't borrow my equipment. And you don't ask me to pay your bills. She gave a small, bitter laugh. You really do have a list. I needed one, she nodded. Fair enough. We didn't hug, she quietly left. My parents took much longer. Nearly 6 months passed before my father called and asked if we could meet for coffee. He never gave me a full apology, that simply wasn't his way. But halfway through the conversation, he finally said, "Your mother and I should have asked first, and we should have paid the invoice when you gave it to us. It wasn't everything. But it was enough to begin. I still love my family." That surprises some people. They think setting boundaries means you stop caring. In reality, boundaries are what allow you to care without losing yourself. I no longer give my parents an emergency key. I no longer lend Emma money. I no longer provide free landscaping work just because we share the same last name. When my parents need work done, Green Line sends them an estimate just like every other customer. They complained the first time, but they paid it. A year after the party, I hosted a barbecue for my employees and their families. This time, the gate was open because I chose to open it. Children swam in the pool while their parents relaxed beneath the lights on the deck. Music played through the new speakers. My crew grilled steaks and burgers on the repaired grill. Rosa handed me a drink and pointed toward the maple tree. "Remember the balloon?" "I remember. Did you ever get it down?" "The wind took it away eventually." She smiled. "Good." I looked around the backyard I had rebuilt twice, once from neglect and once from disrespect. For most of my life, my family treated my silence as permission. They believed I would always clean up the mess because I was capable of doing it. They mistook my patience for weakness. They confused my success with obligation, and they believed being family meant they were exempt from consequences. The day my mother tore up that invoice, she expected the problem to disappear with the paper. She didn't realize that the invoice was never the most important document. The most important thing was the boundary I had finally set for myself. My home was mine, my work was mine, my money was mine, my time was mine. And anyone who wanted a place in my life had to respect that.
If you made it to the end of the story, I'd really love to hear what you think. Do you believe Simon did the right thing by taking legal action against his own family, or should he have forgiven them and moved on? And let me know your opinion in the comments. I read as many of them as I can, and I you enjoy real story about family drama, revenge, relationship, and life season. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notification bell so you never miss a new story. Thanks for watching.